The WNBA was founded in 1996. Its first season tip-off was in 1997, with 8 teams, televised on NBC and ESPN, and built on the premise that women's professional basketball in America could survive as a commercial enterprise. For most of the league's 30-year history, survival was the operating principle, and that principle shaped everything, including how players were paid. Here is the number that defines 3 decades of WNBA economics. In 2025, the average salary in the league was $120,000 per year. The minimum was $66,679. The maximum for the most accomplished veterans was approximately $250,000. The 4-time MVP, the greatest player in the league's history, earned a maximum that year that would not cover a single month of a mid-level NBA player's contract. The gap is staggering. But the gap also has a history, and that history explains why what happened in 2026 matters as much as it does. Like and subscribe if you're new here. This story is about money, and about who decided how much women's basketball was worth. Hit the bell. The WNBA was created as a subsidiary of the NBA. The business model was vertical integration. The NBA owned the league, NBA teams sponsored WNBA franchises, and the financial infrastructure of the men's game was used to bootstrap the women's game into existence. That model had a built-in tension. The NBA's investment in the WNBA was partly commercial and partly promotional. Keeping professional women's basketball visible was good for the sport, good for basketball's public image, and aligned with the broader NBA brand. But that investment was never designed to produce parity. It was designed to produce viability. The early salary structure reflected this. Players were paid enough to compete professionally. They were not paid anything close to what the market for elite athletic labor would otherwise have produced. The argument, repeated across decades of collective bargaining, was that the league did not yet generate the revenue to support higher salaries. Players were asked to be patient. The league would grow. Salaries would follow. What actually happened was more complicated. The league did grow, not always linearly, and not without significant setbacks. But over 3 decades, it built an audience, a brand, and a product that was demonstrably better than when it started. Franchises moved, folded, and were relocated. The player talent level improved dramatically as the global pipeline of elite women's basketball developed. Viewership fluctuated, but trended upward over time. The 2024 season, supercharged by Caitlin Clark's arrival and the league's expanded media footprint, produced record attendance and ratings that attracted serious mainstream attention for the first time in years. But throughout that growth, player salaries did not keep pace. The 2020 collective bargaining agreement, celebrated at the time as a breakthrough, raised the salary cap by 30% and doubled the maximum salary. The numbers were real improvements. And they were still, in absolute terms, a fraction of what elite professional athletes in any comparable context earned. The consequence was a behavior that became normalized to the point of invisibility, WNBA players going overseas. For 20 years, the standard off-season routine for many of the league's top players was to finish the American season in September and immediately travel to Turkey, Russia, China, Spain, or wherever a contract was waiting. The overseas leagues paid multiples of WNBA salaries. In some cases, a single overseas season would pay more than an entire WNBA career's worth of maximum contracts. Players went because the math was unavoidable. The risk of this arrangement became impossible to ignore in February 2022, when Brittney Griner, one of the most dominant players in WNBA history, a 2-time champion, an Olympic gold medalist, was detained at a Moscow airport carrying a small amount of cannabis oil. She spent nearly 10 months in Russian detention, was convicted in a Russian court, and served time in a Russian penal colony before being exchanged in a prisoner swap in December 2022. Griner was in Russia because Russian basketball paid significantly more than the WNBA. Her presence there was not a personal idiosyncrasy. It was an economic decision made by one of the best players in the world, because the league that claimed her as its own did not pay her enough to stay home. The Griner case forced a public reckoning with the overseas salary structure. Congressional attention, advocacy from players and the players' union, and sustained media coverage made the argument that the WNBA's salary problem was not just an economic inconvenience, but a safety issue. The question became impossible to sidestep. If the league cannot pay its best players enough to keep them out of geopolitical danger zones, what does the league's commitment to its players actually look like? The leverage the players' union needed to answer that question with binding salary improvements came from television. The WNBA's broadcast deal restructuring, culminating in the return to NBC in 2026, produced a rights fee landscape that fundamentally changed what the league could afford. For the first time, the revenue base of the WNBA was large enough to support salaries that approached a meaningful percentage of the league's actual worth. The 2026 collective bargaining agreement was the result. The salary cap went from $1.5 million per team to $7 million, a 367% increase in a single CBA cycle. The average salary went from $120,000 to $583,000. The minimum salary, the floor that protects every player who signs a professional contract, went from $66,079 to over $300,000. And for the first time in the history of the league, player compensation was structurally tied to a percentage of league revenue. As the business grows, the players grow with it. Aja Wilson signed the first Supermax contract under the new structure. 3 years, $5 million, fully guaranteed. She earned it. She also earned it 8 years after being drafted, after 4 MVPs and 3 championships, after years of earning a fraction of her market value in a league that was only now catching up to what she had been worth all along. 30 years. That is how long it took the WNBA to build a salary structure that looks, at the top of the scale, like professional athletics. The players who fought for those 30 years, through strikes, lockouts, CBA negotiations, public advocacy, and a player in a Russian prison, made the 2026 deal possible. The next generation of players will not have to go to Russia to afford a living. That fact alone represents an enormous amount of work by an enormous number of people. What it cost them to get there is a story that should not be forgotten. Click on the video on your screen right now. The next story is exactly what you need to understand this one.